So just starting at the very beginning, I studied fine art and I did a lot of drawing. And even before I studied at school, we couldn't have a model in our school. So I needed to do life drawing because I knew that to be an artist, all artists seem to study the human figure. And the only place I could get a model in my house was in the bath. So I'd wait till my cousin, this is my cousin, or my mother, or whoever was taking a bath when I was a teenager, and I'd even have canvases up or pictures up at different periods of time, because they would never stop and pose for long, and I'd have to be very quick. But even now, looking back 20 years later, I can see a sort of style sort of forming. And I think it's the way underwater, in a bath, your body's half underwater, and the parts that come out of the water sort of create a sort of abstract shapes. So you've got sort of the knees and sort of parts coming out of the water, then you've got under the water. So this is very early drawing, and it's actually quite, it sort of carries on throughout my work, because for my process and methods, I usually actually don't have one. I like to draw and let things be more free. So I don't really have a sort of conception of what my projects are going to be and what I'm going to do until I've started doing it. And my process is to just carry on doing things, carry on photographing, filming, re-photographing, seeing the results, changing it. So you could compare my process to a bit like a sculptor who sculpts something in the studio and stands back and thinks, no, I think I'll put a bit more to the right and add a bit more, and then stands back and looks at it. And it's sort of a long process of adjusting and not really knowing the results. And one of the art movements that I'm particularly keen on is the Dada period, and Hugo Ball in the Cabaret Voltaire in 1916. This is a sort of a free-thinking group of artists that believed in automatic writing, believed in something from your subconscious telling you which way to go, something that you couldn't really produce, that you have to kind of work with, and it just comes out of you, and you don't even know really what it's going to come out as. This is Max Ernst, and it's actually a tribute to, it's called Dada in Switzerland, and it's a tribute to the Cabaret Voltaire. And again, he's got a more free-thinking way of making imagery. So he's cutting out, putting things on, things are unexplained, things are upside down, and that's very much what the Dada movement believed in. This is in 1920, a bit later, Max Ernst again. And again, he's showing figures floating, and that kind of freedom that you get in art and drawing, you're much more freer. It's more related to what's inside you, because it's a physical process of just drawing and then getting the results. And some of my own drawing, and so I was looking through my old sketchbooks and just pulling out particular drawings that represented how the forming of this idea was going to happen. So here you can see in the drawing is actually two actors at the side of a circus, and they're going to dress as a triceratops or some kind of dinosaur, but as they're in the wing, they're just sitting waiting to go on, and they form this surreal look. So this was completely from my imagination. I'd never seen this, but I thought, imagine if you had these different representations, different clothing, and then if you imagine and then try and hold it together as one picture. So again, sketchbook work, just running. Sometimes I do doodles. This was a doodle on the phone, so I wasn't even conscious what was going to come out. I was just in the moment doodling, and it's a dinosaur, obviously, and two actors dressed as a dinosaur. So taking these drawings and these bits of fragments of ideas, I started to think about swapping things around, rather like Max Ernst and the Dada period, and the Surrealists also. Imagine if a hand came out where you'd expect a feet to be, or the feet come out, or there's no head. And I started to develop a Super 8 film. So a lot of this work came out in film. And here's a still from the film. So in the film, it's actually better than the still because the figure moves slightly. So there's not a lot of there's no sound, and it's a Super 8 film, so you hear the running of the machine. And then you can see the figure breathing and twisting a bit. And you're getting this, and so that's that sort of challenge, that in drawing and art, you're totally free to do what you want to. You can place things upside down, you can draw whatever you want, but dealing with photography and film or Super 8 film or video, you're restricted by reality, or you've got this limit, and it was always a challenge to kind of go through that limit, but not manipulate. So nothing's manipulated. And I even like the way you can see the fingers coming out, or the sheet I just put down, it was done at home, and you just put down the sheet. And I like the wrinkles on the sheet, because it doesn't look like I'm trying to make a sort of image that you don't understand, or trying to fool you, but I'm actually just sort of working my way through it. And it was very much about all my work. It's the journey, trying to get there, rather than the results. And then we're sort of playing around with it even more. So this is what I was saying, like a sculptor that sculpts a bit and then stands back and looks and then redoes things. I would do a shoot, come home, look at the results, develop the film in the olden days with chemicals, and then go back and reshoot. So this was a reshoot, and the film, I developed 3 different films in the end. So the fingers move here, and hair starts to grow out of the cardigan, because it was done in backwards. In Super 8 you could do that, run things backwards, upside down, and it would look forwards. So I just tried to change the perspectives, but not use too much manipulation. And you can see the sort of references to surrealism, to Man Ray, who I was very influenced by. So I even like the fact that the skirt now is not even joined. So I've given up with trying to pretend it's the figure, but you still lose your sense of what's happening. And I'd make these cardboard cutout plugs to kind of add to that illusion. And again, playing with a figure, playing with the nude, like you can do drawing. You can change things about, take the head off. But here in reality, in the film, she gests and makes gestures to us. This is a drawing I did, again, on the phone, just doodling. Or I think it was at a concert on the concert paper, and then redrew it in my sketchbook. So again, just playing around with the idea. And actually, a tutor of mine said that I'm afraid of childbirth or something. So I mean, you can add your own interpretations, but I just think it was a freedom, similar to the Dada. When you think pre-First World War, they were just showing their freedom of speech before a terrible totalitarian regime comes about. And then I developed it for the 3rd film, had water in it. So you'd cut from a dry sequence when things were upside down to a completely immersed sequence, and the cups of tea, just using ordinary objects, cups of tea that you see every day, and then hair, and just in a sort of flowing dream. This is me, I'm actually balanced on my head, and the film, the hair just goes up like that in the film. And I've made cut-out skirting board and cardboard cut-out plugs, so that to make that illusion, but not try to fool you too much, but just a sort of playful illusion. And the cups of tea would come in again, everyday object. In fact, she'd pour the tea like that, and you can see the hair growing from the cardigan as well. So after I made this piece of work, and as I was saying, I used black and white because that's what you could manipulate the best. It was harder to manipulate like today in digital. So that's why it was mainly in the black and white studio that I did all my work. And also cutting from one scene to another was easier in black and white. If you use colour, hues of colour can change and they look too much like cuts. But if you cut from a scene from underwater to a dry scene, in black and white, it blends in. So this was why I used black and white.